Hey everyone, Unreal Crow here. Welcome back to Sinnoh Extras, the series where I explore special builds and unique additions to the Sinnoh region from the Pokemon games recreated in City Skylines 2. Today we are heading to the skies to build Sinnoh's first international airport. This major project follows our recent community poll where you guys voted to bring air travel infrastructure to Sinnoh, and here it is. We'll construct a full-scale airport designed to serve the western part of the region, especially the bustling Jubilife City agglomeration. In the first part of this episode, we'll begin by laying down the airport's main infrastructure, defining its layout, and setting the foundation for what's going to become Sinnoh's gateway to the skies. We'll also tackle essential infrastructure in Canalave City, linking highways, railways, and future air traffic routes to seamlessly connect the city with the airport and the edge of the map. And after establishing the basic framework, we'll move on to extensive detailing, enhancing realism and giving the airport its distinctive character. There is plenty to cover today, so I hope you guys enjoy the build, and without further ado, let's dive into the first part. There is quite a backstory to this airport build. Ever since working on Jubilife City and progressing through Orburg and Floroma Town, I've been considering where and how to place Sinnoh's major international airport. Many of you also pointed this out in the comments, suggesting possible locations, and I knew I wanted to involve the community in making the final decision. And through the recent poll, it became clear that most of you support the idea of having this large international airport and possibly additional smaller airfields around Sinnoh. And since I'm somewhat following the real-world inspiration of Hokkaido Island, placing the primary airport near Jubilife City felt natural. And in real life, Sapporo is served by the new Chitos Airport, a significant transportation hub on the western side of Hokkaido, and a similar setup seemed logical for Jubilife. And in-game there are currently some limitations and there aren't many options for creating a custom airport, and we mainly have two functional assets and some experimental methods to add additional runways. And so for now, the second runway I'm building is mostly cosmetic, matching the visual style of the vanilla runway to maintain consistency. Although it's not functional at the moment, I plan to activate it once the game mechanics support it better. As you can see right now, I have chosen a parallel runway layout inspired by large international airports, which helps achieve that realistic look in my opinion. And to place this airport effectively, I considered multiple locations, and first potential spot was near Eterna City, but this would have impacted a nearby Eterna forest, an ecosystem I wanted to preserve. Another potential site was south of Sanjam Town. However, the hilly terrain, dense forests, and proximity to Mountain Coronet Range made this area unsuitable, requiring extensive land reclamation and infrastructure adjustments. And ultimately, Canalave City emerged as the best choice, and its location naturally supports major infrastructure like highways, railroads, and maritime ports. And as a result, Canalave will become a crucial gateway to Sinnoh, accommodating both sea and air travel. This choice perfectly aligns with the city's growing importance and ensures the airport integrates seamlessly with the overall region. So this is the reasoning behind selecting this location. I hope it gives you a clearer picture of the thought process behind this important decision. And once the community poll decided that Canalave City was the preferred location for this international airport, I was actually quite relieved, since building it elsewhere would have been far more challenging due to terrain and infrastructure limitations. And nevertheless, if the vote had gone differently, I would have certainly respected it and explored alternative locations, even with extra hurdles involved. When starting to design this airport, I recalled my experience building an international airport back in City Skylines 1 on PlayStation. In that version, particularly with Airports DLC, it was genuinely enjoyable and flexible to lay down runways, taxiways, terminals, and various airport connections. However, in City Skylines 2, due to current limitations, I had to get a bit more creative and make this airport feel both functional and realistic. And the first step was essentially to duplicate the existing vanilla runway design to maintain consistency. And I placed the second runway in such a way that it partially is extended out into the sea, suggesting a scenario where the increased traffic necessitated expanding the original airport infrastructure. And to reflect this, you'll notice the new runway has subtle differences in its appearance later on, hinting at the fact that it was constructed later using slightly different materials or asphalt types, something often seen in real-world airports too. And this creates a realistic yet cohesive aesthetic, making the airport visually appealing and somewhat believable. When designing this airport and deciding how and where to place it, I mostly relied on my intuition and personal experience, and also some good advice from patrons. I've traveled quite a bit by plane and always enjoyed observing airports from above using satellite imagery or watching videos explaining runways, markings, and airport layouts. And however, I wanted to emphasize that this build might not strictly follow every real-world airport logic or regulation. Airports worldwide, I think, are carefully planned, following specific guidelines for safety, efficiency, and infrastructure. So if you notice some inaccuracies or questionable choices, please forgive me. I approached this project primarily with common sense and visual realism in mind, rather than strict adherence to aviation codes, I guess. And for instance, when designing features like how the road passes beneath the runway area, I assumed it would be necessary to leave sufficient space between the roads and the runway itself, even though I've seen real-world examples where space limitations resulted in some pretty extreme setups. And an advantage I had here was that Canalave City is not yet built, giving me the freedom to imagine how the surrounding areas might look and interact with this airport. This allowed me to proactively consider how future parts of the city, like its port, canals, industrial areas, and residential neighborhoods, would integrate with the airport and its associated infrastructure. And with major transport networks like highways and railroads intersecting here, careful planning was quite essential. So the infrastructure I laid out had to connect several critical points. The first one is basically the highway, exit, and railroad at the map's edge. And the second one is the airport itself as a standalone entity. The third one is the future port area. The fourth is Canalave City, and fifth is the eastern entrance point from Road 218 reaching to Jubilife City. Given these requirements, I approached the terrain modifications and interchange designs playfully, trying to, imagine different setups to see how effectively they served these diverse needs. And the first interchange design that I've built that primarily served the airport, I had to revisit it later to accommodate port traffic, for instance, and integrate it more seamlessly into Canalave City eventual layout. Overall, some infrastructure decisions in this episode anticipate future developments. Although I touched on aspects of Canalave City, this build remains primarily about the airport and its immediate surroundings. And once I officially start working on Canalave City, I expect significant changes, except perhaps the main interchange, which may remain intact with only minor adjustments to suit evolving traffic needs and aesthetic preferences. And yeah, guys, if you are enjoying how the infrastructure is developing so far and would like to support this build further, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and perhaps leave a comment of what you think about this whole build. I've noticed that quite a few of viewers aren't subscribed yet, so hitting that subscribe button would really mean a lot and help you stay updated with future developments on the Sinnoh region, and algorithms will also catch up with that and be quite happy. And as always, thank you so much for all the incredible support you've shown to this project so far. It does really help me to stay motivated on building the entirety of Sinnoh. At this point, I realized the initial interchange design was functional but felt rather conventional, and since designing road infrastructure is one of my favorite aspects in City Skylines too, I decided to revisit this interchange to create something more visually appealing and unique, especially inspired by major European airports, which often feature creative and eye-catching designs of interchanges next to them. And my goal was to design an interchange capable of handling substantial traffic from multiple sources, the main regional highway, airport traffic, and future port traffic as well. Although the cargo section of the airport isn't functional yet, I wanted to pre-plan the road infrastructure to accommodate its eventual activation. And this new interchange would feature custom-designed ramps and junctions, providing efficient connectivity and an attractive aerial view, and it would serve as a critical node connecting Canalave City, the International Airport, and the upcoming port area, and major highways towards Jubilife City and the map's border as well. After completing the interchange, I moved on to creating the airport entrance. Using the Road Builder mod, I designed a distinct toll-like entry point featuring separate lanes branching off from the main road, and these lanes have reduced speeds to visually slow down the cars approaching the airport, and additionally the setup provided space for further detailing later on, making it feel like a genuine airport entry, enhancing its realism and overall appearance. The second key element for managing traffic after this entry point was the addition of a roundabout. It was placed strategically to ensure smooth distribution of vehicles, directing traffic toward the main passenger terminal while also providing convenient access to the cargo terminal, which I'll develop later. Additionally, it serves as an entry and exit point for other facilities that will further enhance the airport city area, making it functional and realistic. And yeah, given the topic, the airport building in City Skylines to itself might look a bit generic, and the large international terminal provided by the game is often overly spacious and feels somewhat out of scale, especially for the setting I also envisioned here. And I'm not particularly fond of the design that this building has, and I suspect many players might feel similarly. Therefore, if you are aiming to enhance the visual appeal and realism of the smaller regional style airport terminal, it's crucial to focus heavily on detailing its surroundings. And the airport terminal itself is quite acceptable and the runway works fine visually, but the real charm and realism will come from how you develop the area around it, I think. I started by developing the airport's main entrance area, and one of the first things I wanted to do was expand parking a little bit here. Initially, there was this parking closer to the terminal building, and later I will get rid of it just to have this cleaner look. And yeah, basically, instead, I focused on building a more functional parking layout near the main entrance, and this allowed drivers to park conveniently without needing to enter this core kind of area of terminal itself. And next, I tackled the placement of the airport train station. At first, I envisioned placing it slightly below surface level, visible enough for passengers and visitors to see incoming trains. However, after sketching out the initial train line through Canalave City, I changed my mind and decided to fully submerge this section underground, as it felt more realistic and efficient. And thanks to the mod, I was able to place the underground train station markers and basically was able to set up passenger loading and unloading beneath the surface. And to functionally connect the underground station with the airport terminal, I used these hidden paths, quite a popular trick among City Skylines players. I positioned this hidden path strategically inside terminal building leading to the underground station, so passengers coming from the station would naturally appear as they were walking out directly from the terminal doors. And I think this small detail really enhanced the realism of the airport and made the experience for passengers feel much more integrated and believable. And after that, yeah, I basically made this train connection towards Jubilife City and then started expanding the road infrastructure and placed the first buildings to test how the area might shape up visually. This was just an initial sketch, giving me a basic idea of how this space would function and feel. Later, I planned to revisit this area for deeper detailing. At this point, I was already quite happy with how everything was coming together and how the airport started to gain its initial appealing look. Before moving forward, I needed to finish sketching out the final road layout, including additional entrances dedicated to public transportation and some extra routes specifically for buses and taxis. I took a moment also to place a few more buildings just to get a better sense of how this area might look visually once fully developed. And with this part finalized, I felt ready to move on to the next step, detailing the runway to enhance the overall realism and aesthetic of the airport. For this custom runway, I initially followed the layout directly copied from the vanilla airport, but since this was now its own standalone feature, I had the freedom to add some extra detailing. The first addition I made was placing runway holding position markings, essentially stop signs that instruct pilots to wait before entering or crossing an active runway. Once I put this down, I noticed that space between runway and taxiway in the vanilla design was rather short, potentially creating some unrealistic scenarios with aircraft waiting positions. Nonetheless, working within the constraints of the vanilla setup, I placed simple stop markings without diving too deeply into complex runway numbering or additional signage. And following this, I started to add some realism by placing dirt decals and wear markings along the runway surface, representing the spots where planes frequently break hand when landing. This extra detailing helped to visually suggest regular use, enhancing the authenticity and bringing the runway closer to its realistic appearance. While working on the airport's design, I had some insightful discussions with one of my patrons who turned out to be quite knowledgeable about airport operations, and he suggested adding some important infrastructure details that I honestly hadn't considered initially, and one key recommendation was placing an electrical substation or emergency power storage facility nearby. And this addition ensures that even if the main electricity line is disrupted, an airport could still maintain essential operations for a few hours or potentially a few days, relying on stored power. And recent real-world events like the power disruptions at London's Heathrow Airport underline the significance of having such backup infrastructure. I was genuinely grateful for the suggestion, and it felt great to incorporate realistic touches like this, making the airport feel even more authentic and robust. While also modifying these airline connections to other regions, I thought it would be realistic and fun if Pokemon trainers and regular passengers, alongside their Pokemon partners, would fly from Sinnoh to more distant regions like Unova, Kalos, or Paldea. These newer Pokemon regions, inspired by locations beyond Japan, such as France and the United States, would definitely require a long-haul flight from our Sinnoh International Airport, making it a truly global gateway. And for now, I've given it the airport placeholder name, the West Sinnoh International Airport, but I would definitely love to hear your creative suggestions. So feel free to propose unique or interesting names in the comments, and we might even run a poll potentially involving my patrons to choose the best name together. So let me know if you have any ideas on that. One more detail I really wanted to add to this build was enhancing the overall appearance of the highways next to the airport. Specifically, I focused on designing interesting tunnel entrances for the section of infrastructure that includes both the railroad and the highway. And I experimented a bit and settled on a relatively simple but visually appealing design. I used elevated pedestrian paths and placed pillar top structures along them, creating a gradual structured entrance into the tunnels. The final result looked quite nice, especially from an aerial view, so I replicated this design at the other entrance point as well, and overall I was quite happy with how it turned out. Another detail that I wanted to incorporate was the approach lighting system guiding planes safely onto the runway. I'm not entirely sure if it meets the real-world aviation standards, but visually it turned out quite appealing, especially with the addition of small lights on top of the structures. During nighttime, these lights create a really nice aesthetic, guiding incoming flights during their descent. And after setting up the approaching towers, I also expanded the lighting for the second runway, closely replicating the design of the original vanilla runway at night. And I didn't do anything extraordinary here, just arranged the lights in a similar fashion to maintain visual consistency across both runways at night. Once the airport lighting was up and brightening the area nicely, I started outlining the airport's perimeter using the standard pathways from Vanilla Game. At first, I planned to use these pathways only as a guideline for placing defenses later on, but after positioning defenses on top, it created a clear and visually pleasing boundary, and from an aerial view, it became quite easy to distinguish exactly where the airport begins and ends, and I was really satisfied with how this detail turned out. As you can see, I also placed this large postal sorting facility right here. It was a great suggestion from one of my patrons, and I think it really fits perfectly in this area, especially considering the logistics and cargo activity around the airport. With this facility in place, this area effectively turns into a proper cargo hub, providing a substantial amount of jobs and adding to the realism of the airport. Another nice detail I wanted to add was labeling the runways with numbers and directional letters, just like in real-world airports. This helps pilots easily identify their landing direction and runway assignment, and since my Sinnoh map aligns with real-world directions, Snow Point City at the North Tip, and other locations corresponding accurately, it was straightforward to choose runway numbers. Both runways here face either north, marked as 36, or south, marked as 18, and I also use letters R and L to distinguish between the right and left runways respectively. Creating these custom decals and positioning them was simple, but I think it significantly boosted the realism and authenticity of the airport. Next, I moved on to detailing the airport's entrance, the tall station area, which I approached with fairly simple lightweight design. I didn't go overboard here, but I wanted to ensure it felt realistic, especially in the sense of how chaotic these tall entrances usually are. When you approach the stations in real life, drivers tend to maneuver unpredictably, looking for the shortest queue, and to capture this, I intentionally placed directions in slightly irregular pattern, giving vehicles the freedom to pick lanes dynamically. For the overhead structures, I utilized bus station covers, a trick I've seen many City Skylines creators employ. It worked perfectly here, creating the visual impression of toll gates clearly recognizable from above, and I'm really satisfied with the overall look it provided to this key entry point of the airport. Next, I moved on to adding some extra details to boost the realism and atmosphere of the area. One of my favorite tricks to enhance parking lots is placing non-functional car props randomly to simulate occupied spaces. Although these cars don't move, they instantly make the parking areas appear busier and more realistic. Of course, this method isn't perfect, and sometimes a functional car may end up parking over a static model, causing visual overlap, but for capturing nice screenshots and cinematics, it greatly improves the overall aesthetic. Next, I focused on bringing more life into this entrance area by detailing every corner possible to create an authentic airport atmosphere. I started by enhancing the entrance zone, recognizing that it is a vital transition point. Travelers either arrive and head directly into the airport, or leave the terminal in search of transportation options like buses, taxis, and rental cars. To address this, I placed essential infrastructure and clearly defined spaces for parking and public transportation. I also wanted this space to offer some comfort and convenience, recognizing travelers might appreciate spots to relax or grab something to eat before heading into the terminal or after arriving from a long journey. This involved adding communal areas with benches, greenery, and smaller service-oriented building cafes, rental kiosks, and quick-bite restaurants. Such details give this airport entrance a realistic feel, making it more than just a pass-through, but rather a welcoming space that accommodates the needs of travelers, visitors, and airport staff alike. One detail I was particularly excited about was adding a dedicated car rental area. Recently, I had experiences at the airports where finding the car rental pickup point wasn't very intuitive, sometimes tucked away in confusing spots. Here, I aimed for a semi-convenient placement just past the public transport zone. Turning right, you'd arrive at a neat row of booths representing 5 different rental companies, each with cars ready for passengers eager to explore Sinnoh. And after setting up the rental area, I turned my attention to creating a special landmark at the main airport entrance, this distinctive roundabout serving as a gateway to the terminal and cargo zones. To make this truly unique, I incorporated the large 6-pointed Sinnoh star, symbolizing the region's identity, surrounded by a vivid blue background reminiscent of the Sinnoh flag. I also somehow wanted to represent the 18 settlements across Sinnoh, so I created this encircled centerpiece with a modern sky-reaching pillars arranged in a harmonious round formation, and I thought that this entire arrangement creates an iconic, visually memorable entrance to the airport, easily noticeable even from the above as planes approach or leave the island. And now, before we wrap up this episode, I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy watching how I detailed the rest of the airport, also the cargo terminal, additional hotels for layover passengers, and all the finishing touches to bring Sinnoh International Airport together. And yeah guys, we are reaching the end of this episode. To set the stage for future development in Canalave City, I've sketched out a preliminary canal network. Let me know in the comments if you think this layout suits Canalave's vibe. We'll revisit this area after wrapping up Eternal City. However, I might leave the gym itself unfinished, creating instead a construction site placeholder for now. We'll return here once the story naturally guides us towards Canalave Gym later. Before wrapping up, I would like to extend a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters, governors of Sinnoh and members of Regional Council, Mazes, Cat Aspen, Antpez, and Sai Eliza Terra. Your generous support helps tremendously and I truly appreciate each one of you guys. And of course, thank you to all my viewers. I would love to hear your thoughts on this airport build. Did I miss anything important, or is there something you would suggest for added realism? Let me know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps this project grow and reach out more people, of course. And thanks again for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon in the next episode where we will dive into the exciting Eternal City build. Take care guys, and I'll see you soon.